Live look at Lady Liberty and at Fox News World Headquarters. This camera is planted at Fox News World Headquarters, looking down the road at 6th Avenue, Radio City Music Hall, down the way there. Also, early morning hours in Tel Aviv as well, just past 5 in the morning there, Israel Standard Time. Let's talk about the Middle East. This past weekend, the U.S. sent 7 B-2 stealth bombers from Missouri to Iran to strike their nuclear program. The crews on those planes flew roughly 37 hours to get the job done. The crews got in and out of Iranian airspace before they were even detected. Let's learn more about the B-2s. Retired U.S. Air Force Brigadier General Rob Spalding is here. Good to see you, General. I saw you were promoting our interview on social media. You said you're getting ready to talk to us here. You mentioned something I want to ask you about, though. Why missions start long before takeoff? What is involved in preparing for something like this?
Well, you have to do the planning to make sure everything goes okay. You've got several refuelings. Of course, you have to study the targets that you're going after, make sure that you have all the information you need on setting the weapons. And then, of course, you have to make sure that you're physically prepared, you're rested, your nutrition is proper. And then also you have to worry about how do we make sure that we don't tip off the enemy to what we're doing. We want to make sure that the operations at the base don't look any different than any other regular training day, and that everything that we do prevents us from tipping off the enemy to what's going on.
We're looking at some images at nighttime of the B-2 stealth bombers. The Pentagon says Operation Midnight Hammer, General, was the longest B-2 flight in decades. We know that it can be refueled in the sky, but what non-military hardware is aboard these planes? I've heard of microwaves, restrooms, coolers. What helps keep these guys in the air so long?
Well, there's no microwave. Actually, that was an addition. I take that back. That was we started out, we didn't have microwaves, and we did get microwaves. There's some guys bring a cot that you can lay down on the ground. And then, of course, you know, I used to like to bring a case of Starbucks when I was going on a long flight like that. So it's typically items that accompany your either eating or drinking. And then, of course, all of your survival gear that sometimes you wear what's called a dry suit if you could have a potential of going down in cold water. So a lot of survival capability. Of course, mission planning materials, just a lot of different things that you bring into the cockpit.
This was, as I said, a 37-hour mission. When they return from something like this, are they pretty much having a party or something like that as soon as they return? What is that type of feeling like?
Well, you're exhausted, firstly, and then you've got to go in and you got to get a debrief because the intelligence officers want to know exactly what you saw fresh out of your mind. You go from the debrief, from intelligence to maintenance debrief to talk about the condition of the aircraft if you had any problems, and then it's off to home and bed.
So the B-2 was originally introduced, correct me if I'm wrong, in the late 80s. Are the planes that are used today the same makeup as the ones used back then?
Exact same airplanes. They've been upgraded several times. The radar's been upgraded. The defense management system's been upgraded. A lot of the avionics have been upgraded. So there's a lot of additional capabilities that have been brought onto the aircraft over time. Of course, the skin, it's gotten easier to maintain, and it's more durable. And that's made the aircraft, you know, much more stealthy over time. You know, instead of degrading, it's held up quite a bit. So a lot of different things to make the aircraft continue to be just as capable as when it was envisioned coming off the production line.
As you allude to, the shape and the coating are two of the primary factors that make it stealth. How stealth is it? What would it take to find a B-2 on a radar? Something like a needle in a haystack?
Well, you know, it's stealthy, but, you know, what really makes it work is, you know, there's so many airplanes in the sky, and radars really, you know, look at those airliners and other aluminum aircraft, and they really light up. And so it's really hard for the radars to see a stealthy aircraft because of the other aircraft in the air that are really lighting up the sky.
One more thing that I find fascinating about these planes, as we've again been looking at some file footage of some of the B-2s, they're based at Whiteman Air Force Base, correct? They flew from Missouri to Iran to get this thing done. Why are these planes based in Missouri?
Well, you know, most of our strategic assets are based in the middle of the country. It actually protects them and gives us warning time. You know, all of these weapon systems carry nuclear weapons. And so you have to be concerned about either submarine launched ballistic missiles coming from the coast. So we've located most of our strategic assets towards the middle of the country.
So how often are these planes used? We just finished covering, I mean, we had some marathon coverage here, obviously, covering the Middle East. We've been talking about these planes since Saturday. I can't remember a time that I've spent so much time focusing on one type of plane. I can't remember a time where I've heard about B-2s so much. How often are these things taken out and used in this capacity? I shouldn't say in this capacity, but how often are they used?
They're really not used that often. Even in like the Iraq war, they're just used in the very first few days of the war, typically used to take out the integrated air defense systems, to allow the other aircraft that are less stealthy to fly. It's really a strategic weapon. It's exactly built for the types of attacks that we had with Iran. Something that's very hard to go after, something that requires a one strike, and that's very successful the first time around. So it's not used very often, and that's why you don't hear about it too much. So it's been kind of exciting to have the president and the rest of America actually see what the airplane can do, what it's capable of, what it really allows the country to expect in terms of national security.
We've been following the Trump administration's effort to build what they call the Golden Dome. They say that they want to build the Golden Dome in an effort to protect the country from the offensive weapons of the future. Since the B-2 came about in the late 80s, is there going to be a point at which this thing has to be retired and it needs to be upgraded so that it can handle the defensive capabilities of the future, if you will?
Well, I think that the big thing with regard to Golden Dome and what you're seeing happen in Ukraine and Russia is the rise of drones and the threat that they pose to strategic aircraft like the B-2. And I think what we need to see going forward is much more focus on the homeland, protecting our bases, protecting those aircraft against the use of drones. If you consider that if there was prior knowledge of this strike, then somebody could have, flown drones potentially into those aircraft while they were training and rendered them unuseful, like happened with the Ukrainian attack of Russia. So it's very important that we build Golden Dome, not just for ballistic missiles, but for small drones. Also, we need to protect against cyber attacks. All of these things present challenges to our bases here at home, and it's not something that we have really focused on in the last several decades.
All right. Retired U.S. Air Force Brigadier General Rob Spalding with us tonight. Thanks, General.
Thank you.